Chairman, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
The bill pending before us has been so well described in the discussion of the rule that it seems superfluous to repeat the major items of the pending legislation. At the Rules Committee yesterday, I said, and our floor manager for the Rules Committee restated, that we bring to the House bills that pass the House in the 110th Congress individually. And the gentleman from Colorado read off the votes, overwhelming, well over 300 to those bills, just bipartisanship, nonpartisanship, overwhelming support for these measures. Unfortunately, they went to the other body, never to be heard of again. So we thought it would be a better approach this year to combine those all into one bill. Maybe the other body can do one bill instead of 5. We're hoping. The commitment to clean water, though, cannot be taken so lightly, cannot be just subject to hotline holds by the other body, cannot be subject to undisclosed holds, cannot be subject to indifference to action. The agenda for clean water is ours. It's for the next generation. It's to hand on to the next generation water in better condition than we received it from the previous generation. And I've been on the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure from the time it was Committee on Public Works. I started my career in this House in January 1963 as clerk of the Subcommittee on Rivers and Harbors, the oldest committee of the House, the first committee of the House. And our work has evolved over many years to cover a wide range of issues related to investment in the nation's well-being, but none more fundamental, more important than water. All the water we ever had on this earth, or ever will be, is with us today. We aren't going to create new water from any technological source. No comet is likely to come into our orbit and deposit more ice to form new water. It's our responsibility to care for the water we have. Every day, 42 trillion gallons of moisture passes over the continental United States. 10% of that falls as moisture, 4.2 trillion. Of that, some 4 trillion gallons is absorbed by the soil or evaporates. The rest, some 680 billion gallons, goes into the surface waters of the United States. That is all we have every day, 680-some billion gallons. We have to manage it well, make sure that we use it properly, that we return to the streams and lakes and the estuaries of the nation water in a clean condition. This legislation will move us in that direction. The centerpiece of this $18.7 billion package of bills is restoration of and reauthorization of the State Revolving Loan Fund, from which funds are borrowed by municipalities to build wastewater treatment facilities, sewer lines, interceptor sewers, separate storm combined storm and sanitary sewers. But for a dozen years, until the 110th Congress, that legislation had expired and had not been reauthorized. The funding was continued, but at lower levels of appropriation for each of those 12 years until the 110th Congress, and then it leveled off. Because the authorization legislation could never make its way to the House floor, even though our committee was prepared to do that. We had bipartisan support within the committee, but we could never get it to the House floor. Well, we brought it to the floor in the 110th, passed overwhelmingly, as I said earlier, went to the Senate, but has not moved. The stimulus legislation provides funding, some $4.6 billion, half in loans and half in grant funds to state revolving loan funds to create jobs and to deal with the backlog of need in state wastewater treatment programs and sewer upgrades. Hardly a week goes by that I don't read of a water main break or a sewer line break somewhere throughout this country. Commentary on the aging wastewater infrastructure of this country and the need to rebuild it, need to upgrade our sewage treatment plant facilities built in the 70s and some in the 80s that are beyond their capacity or that are in need of new technology upgrades. This legislation will move us in the direction of dealing with those needs. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Minnesota.
I yield myself 1 minute
The gentleman is recognized.
to express my great appreciation to Mr. Micah for the splendid cooperation we've had and bipartisan spirit in which we approached combining these bills into one package, one piece of legislation for the House floor. Ms. Johnson for her splendid leadership as chair of the subcommittee, Mr. Bozeman as the ranking member who has done a splendid service to the nation in his championship of water, and Mr. Ehlers. If it were up to me, I'd rename this the Vern Ehlers Great Lakes Legacy Act. At some point in time, I think we'll come to do that. We do have a president from the Great Lakes region who has increased funding for the Great Lakes in his budget, but the details are yet to come. The overall dollar amount is increased, I'd say, Mr. Chairman, and I hope to work closely with the gentleman from Michigan as the details of the budget come out to designate the appropriate amount of funding for the Great Lakes Legacy Act. Now I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pasquarel, a refugee from the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, but still an advocate for our programs and particularly for clean water.